Hello, everyone. Andy here from Biohazard Declassified as always. Thank you so much for tuning in to this edition of the Biohazard Declassified podcast. We've got a very special guest on today, and I've been wanting to get this fella on for a very long time. He's piqued my interest. He had my curiosity, and now he's got my attention. Is the infamous Aydan Watkins. Aydan, how the devil are you doing today?
Well, I'm doing rather well, thank you, Andy. Yourself?
Yeah, man. Yeah, I'm glad that we finally managed to get this sorted. I feel like I've been messaging you for months and months and months, trying to get this in a diary, and now we're finally here, and we can talk about your craft, man, your craft. So let's start from the beginning. Tell the people who you are. Tell the people what you do.
Okay. So hello everyone. I'm Aydan Watkins, as you've probably known if you've seen my work. I'm from the United Kingdom, and I have a strange hobby of modifying 25-year-old Resident Evil games.
And you do that exceptionally well. There is a massive history behind Resident Evil modifications dating back to the late 90s, as you well know. So obviously, as best you can, give a little bit of background of why you got into Resident Evil modding and kind of your key inspirations behind Resident Evil modding.
A little background, man. There's going to be a bigger answer than that. Okay, so I've been a Resident Evil fan since like 1997 when I first played the games. I played the very first game on the Sega Saturn when I was 8, which is a pretty funny age to be playing such a game, but there we are. And I've always been a massive, massive fan ever since, literally die-hard fan. Anyway, moving forward, I think it was around about 2003, 2004, I joined a forum called Bioflames, and I recall there being a mod called Dark Biohazard, which was teased, and that's an infamous mod. Everyone knows about it and has seen it. But unfortunately, for whatever reason, it just seemed to disappear off the face of the earth. And then for many years, just I hadn't really heard or seen any mods before. Then about 2.5-3 years ago, I went back and played through the original trilogy for the first time in a little while, and I just found myself wanting more. So I went onto YouTube and I thought, hey, you have mods for Doom, you have mods for Half-Life, for every single game under the sun. What about these? And when I took a little look through, I could see some out there, but there wasn't a lot. But the one I remember finding was Mortal Night by ResNM30, who is, of course, working on During the Storm. And I remember playing that and just thinking, wow, it just blew my mind. It's literally like a whole new Resident Evil game. It's just a fresh experience. It's exciting. It's fun. And I kind of just thought, hey, I'd like to dip my toe in this pool, give it a go, and see what I can come up with.
Yeah, and if I may speak, and if I may speak openly about this, and we've spoke about it many, many times, but I mean, what have you been doing it for? 2.5 years, roughly?
Yeah, somewhere around there. I think I started around mid 2019, I think it was. But I didn't really get, the first 4-5 months of it was learning the ropes, because even though there is a small community of modders now, back then it was pretty much dead. And even the people who were around, before me, they didn't really speak much, or there was no real tutorials or information. So a lot of it was sort of me discovering through trial and error on my own, to be honest.
But your first modification was Barry's mod, wasn't it? Because that was when you kind of entered our radar, was with Barry's mod.
Yeah, that was the first mod I ever created, and it started off with just swapping some models over and then running around as Barry and thinking, oh, this is pretty cool. Well, where can I go with this? And of course, people who've played it have seen what it was like from its very first version all the way up to its current one, and how it's changed and evolved with each release as I've been learning more.
Yeah, and it really has been almost like your modification and your videos and stuff like that. It's just been a journal of you learning the craft. And what I like about what you do, Aydan, is I think I've lost him. But what I like about Aydan is he does give back to the community in the form of modification tools and bits and pieces. It's actually really good to see. Sorry, we've just lost him. Let's see if we can bring him back in. There we go. Sorry about that. Yeah, so I was saying that you also give back to the community in the form of modification tools and bits and pieces like that. So it's not just, you're not necessarily just out for yourself. You're also giving back to the community and allowing people to effectively create their own modifications inside of Resident Evil.
Yeah, first of all, I just want to apologize for that to everyone in chat. I'm using a mobile phone, so it might cut out intermittently, so sorry about that. But getting back to what you said at the start before it cut out, yeah, you can kind of see with each mod I've released, it's kind of been a journey. You can see when I started Barry's mod, it's a very simple modification. Then you go into Ada's mod where we start to see a few more extra features. Then you go into like the Wesker mode, which has even more again, and then you go into Containment, which is essentially almost like a total conversion in many aspects. So you can kind of see a progression as I go along. As for the tools kind of thing, yeah, a lot of the work I've done is using tools of other people. Us modders right now, we are standing on the shoulders of those that came before us, to put it in a nice philosophical way. But while some of the tools are useful, there are some which they're unfinished, so they're very buggy or they don't have clear functions. So for Resident Evil 1, for example, I decided to make my own tools, which, I've shared with a couple of people just to see how easy they are to use, and so far so good. But once I finish Containment, I will be releasing the tool public to everyone, and I do plan to do video tutorials, so people can literally modify Resident Evil 1 within like 2 minutes, and that's not an exaggeration. I actually timed someone doing it.
Oh, you got to be careful, mate. I think they'll start putting you out of business. In terms of, and that's quite a nice segue actually. So you started off on Resident Evil 1 PC modding, because there's so many different kind of infrastructures. There's the Resident Evil 1 engine, the RE2 engine, and then of course you've got, and that's just on PC. Then you've got the PSX modifications, which is its own subgenre of mods. So initially it was just PC mods and on RE1, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it was with PC mods, and PC is still the best platform to do it on, to be honest, just simply for the quality of life improvements that have been brought in with Gemini's classic rebirth patches. And also there are a lot less limitations when working on the PC. Just as one example, on the PC version, you have a lot more leeway to add a lot more enemies into rooms, because it doesn't have 2 megabytes of RAM like the PlayStation does, and things like that.
Yeah, no, agreed. And what I kind of like about this, and we spoke about this off air, is that your journey. I remember us talking like 18 months ago, and you was like, I'm never modding for PlayStation. And then when we spoke the other day, you was very much like, do you know what? I'm open to the possibility of it. And now you're starting to do it. And first I didn't understand the rationale, but when you sat down and explained it to me, the install base is a lot bigger on the PlayStation versions. You'll be able to play it on actual hardware. Like this isn't just a modification for a very small substrata of people to enjoy. You'll effectively be able to start pushing these so people like on their phones can play it, and on their Raspberry Pis, and even on official hardware down the line.
Yeah, well, again, there are plenty of PC players out there who play and enjoy the mods, and streamers and so on, but as I discussed with you, and also funnily enough, my good friend Elric, who's working on the Revisited project, but we can talk about that another time. The PlayStation does have a much, much bigger install base, and the amount of times when I put video mods out, or just videos of mods, or release pictures or stuff, the amount of people that go, can I play this on PlayStation? Can we play this on emulator? It's quite overwhelming. So I was kind of like, obviously there's a massive market for people out there, and in this day and age, which I find strange personally, not a lot of people have PCs. Most people tend to have tablets or phones to do everything on. So of course you can emulate PlayStation on those. So again, it opens even more doors for more people to play. So yeah, that was kind of my thought.
And again, it was very much like that. The amount of comments, I mean, even on stuff like, for us, it's During the Storm. It's like, oh, I want to play this on PlayStation. I want to play this on PlayStation. We've always been like, no, absolutely not. But now it's like, with the work that you're doing, and of course with contributors, this is now a possibility. It's unreal. Like I cannot stress the work that you're doing now is going, not only will completely expand the world of Resident Evil modding, making it easier. It's like it's so fucking impressive, and I cannot stress it enough. And I know you're humble about it, but if we, for example, bring out something like Resident Evil Survivor Redux, which is such a simple concept of turning Resident Evil Survivor into third person, but you've also gotten that step further. You also, implementing quality of life changes to it. It's unreal, and it's almost like I almost feel worried for you. That it might be so good that you'll get cease and desisted in a way.
Well, first things first. I'm not going to say it's impossible, but During the Storm on the PlayStation is very unlikely. That's the word I'm going to use. I'm not going to say impossible, but I will say unlikely. Again, because we're going to be talking about limitations. And to be fair to Resnem, that guy has 10 years of experience, and the things he is doing is just, it's out of this world, and things I can only hope to achieve someday. And to put that onto a PlayStation, I don't. While I don't think it's possible, I'll say it's improbable. Anyway, to get back onto the Redux, as you said, with that, it is a simple concept, but it's a lot of work. And in regard to the cease and desist, I've never been concerned because I've been doing this for the last 2.5 years, and I've never had a single problem from Capcom, which, it's either because they don't care or they haven't noticed. And I'm going to lean more on towards them not caring, because
Yes.
I'm confident with all the channels and connections such as yourself and Residents of Evil and that playing my work. Surely someone somewhere in the company has seen it and probably just, sort of swept it under the desk.
And I think that's been a very good marketing tool for yourself. I know your primary social media, I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, is Twitter.
Yeah. So sorry. Yeah.
That's right. As you are, go
on. Yeah. Twitter is mainly it. I'm not the biggest fan of the platform for many reasons, but it seems to be the best place to communicate and sort of what's the word, collaborate with people and just get communicated with them.
Yeah, 100%. And almost this has got kind of the Fall Guys streaming element to it, where it's almost like when you put a mod out, assuming that they're subscribed to your Patreon, we'll talk about that in a little bit later. When you put a mod out, it almost whips around the Resident Evil streaming community faster than you can blink, and then it's in people's hands. They're testing it out to the thousands and thousands of people that they're playing it in front of, and it's just a great marketing tool for yourself. Classic Resident Evil fans will be able to experience Resident Evil in a slightly different way, and I've stressed this on stream before. You're not just throwing 10 Mr. X's at us and going, "God, what a fantastic mod." I mean, the idea of that is kind of cool, but it's not just a super hard mod. The mods you're doing are canonically compatible with the Resident Evil lore. They're not completely out of the realms of possibility. I mean, stuff like Survivor is just straight up a quality of life update. What's your opinion on doing mods like yours versus obviously we won't stress names because it'd be inappropriate, but for other modders who just make it stupidly difficult to the point it almost becomes like a Dark Souls game?
Well, this is a thing. For me, I'm of the opinion that content is content, whether it's really well made and polished and radically changes things. For me personally, while I wouldn't play those kind of games or mods because I'm just not interested in that, I still appreciate the fact that it's content for people to play, and there is an audience for people out there who like that, such as the professional streamers. Like you have, say, Wolf DNC and Bulk Basoup. Those guys are like Resident Evil pros, so those kind of mods appeal to them. Whereas I've always looked at modding as a way to just, I've always wanted to make my stuff feel like as if it was made by Capcom, but
Oh, we lost him again. He will be back. Do not worry. What you're looking at now is an excerpt from Resident Evil Containment, which is an upcoming release from Aydan. He's done a PC release of it, and he's going to be porting it to PlayStation there afterwards, which is what you're seeing here. Sorry, as you were saying, my good friend.
yeah, again, sorry about this, guys. The joys of streaming from mobile phone. As I was saying, I try to make my mods kind of like Capcom level of difficulty, maybe with a little bit more. And I just try to tell stories and just do things that are different. I want to change up the game rather than it being the same base Resident Evil 2 experience or Resident Evil 3, but with, a crap ton of enemies or items hidden in stupid places, because that to me is not challenge or fun. That's just tedium. But again, that opinion. I'm not saying it's raw bad. It's just it's my personal preference.
Yeah, no, I don't think that's unreasonable, and I love that substrata of Resident Evil mods where you have the ability, you're effectively making your own Resident Evil game. We've seen this with stuff like Mortal Night, Resident Evil Destiny, and of course with your modifications, a la Ada's mod, Marvin's mod. I mean, I do feel like you kind of underrate yourself, because calling them mods, I think is taken away. What you're doing is complete total conversions. You're telling new stories inside of the Resident Evil engine.
Yeah, I guess so, but at the same time, because they are based on existing engines and existing assets, they are still technically mods. But that's all I can say.
No, it's all good. Just run me past the rationale of why you wanted to bring Resident Evil Survivor in third person, and talk us through your developmental process of getting there.
Okay, well, after I finished episode 1 of Resident Evil Containment, I was pretty burnt out because...
And guys, you're seeing footage of Resident Evil Survivor being played on an emulator, a PlayStation 1 emulator. This is Resident Evil Survivor in third person, excuse me. And it really does look official. It actually does blow my mind.
Again, sorry. I'm so sorry about that, everyone. It can't be helped. It just keeps happening. Anyway, sorry. As I was saying, I finished episode 1 of Containment, and I was pretty burnt out, as that took a good couple of months to create, because it's not, before the actual making of the mod and putting it together comes into play, it's a case of researching and reversing the code. Like, at the time, no one had ever actually reversed Resident Evil 1 scripting before. So I took the time, which took, a few months for me to slowly do it. Things like reversing cutscene codes, learning flags, how to make sounds play when I want them, just things like that. So after being burnt out, I thought, you know what, I'm just going to have some fun and just mess around and experiment. So I found DuckStation, which is a PlayStation emulator, and I loaded up Resident Evil Survivor, which is one of my favorite games, despite most people hating it. And I saw it had a feature in there that actually allows you to disable the GUI, so the heads-up display on the screen. And I'd done that, and I thought, okay. So I took a screenshot with some cool angles, decided to import them into Resident Evil 2, modify the cameras a bit, and then I don't know, something just clicked in my brain, and I just thought, this looks really cool. It's an interesting concept. It's a lot of people haven't played Survivor or given it the appreciation I think it deserves. Now, don't get me wrong, voice acting is terrible, but the lore behind it is very fascinating and very dark. And I think by bringing it into a mod context like this, I think it'll give it the appreciation it deserves, and I'm just kind of hoping that more people can play it, because it's definitely the one game in the series that doesn't get the coverage from people that it should, or even the playtime that it should.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair statement. And what's sad about this, that would be the wrong way of phrasing it, but what's kind of unnerving about it is, how is this is such a simple concept. How has nobody thought of this before? It's in
Well,
my opinion, it's kind of in the. Obviously, it's not in the Resident Evil 2 engine because it was in fully 3D, and it was obviously it wasn't on rails, but it had a G-Con implementation in first person. But most of the assets are based on Resident Evil 2, the Licker, Mr. X. I think the only thing that in my mind, the only thing you're probably going to have a problem with is the Panthers, or those weird cat things that are in the suits.
yeah, well, to be honest with you, perhaps the idea has been out there, but I haven't heard anyone talk about it or say it, so I can't really comment on that. Or if someone wants to accuse me of plagiarism, then I don't know, whatever. But I don't know. I'm guessing that the main reason it hasn't happened is that it's a lot of work. It's not people don't realize how much effort goes into something as simple as just changing a few cameras in a room. It takes time to perfect it. It's not a case of opening up a program, pressing a few buttons, and you're done. It's not. It's a case of you need to get these backgrounds, import them into the game, then you need to open up the actual room file, then you need to go camera by camera, slowly tweaking it, saving it, loading the room up, seeing if the character's too tall, too short, if they're too far away. Then you've got to do the boundaries, and honestly, there's a lot that goes into it. And I can't say people couldn't be bothered, because that's not true. But I don't know. Maybe people just thought it would be too overwhelming, or maybe didn't know how to do it, because again, it's a pretty niche community at the moment, and it always has been so.
Yeah, you're telling me. Yeah, it certainly is niche, but I feel like you're well. It obviously goes without saying you're in the top echelon of modding for classic Resident Evil games. I don't know how to put the pool of people that involves. I don't know how many people are involved in that scene, but the mods that you're managing to put together are of such a high caliber. And I said, making it lore compatible is like the absolute icing, the chef's kiss, as they say. Talk me through Resident Evil Containment, because this is an original project. This isn't bringing on doing Marvin's mod, which was kind of a recreation of the scenario from Outbreak, and Ada's mod. Appreciate it is original, but it was still kind of Resident Evil 1. Resident Evil Containment is a completely original scenario, modification. Talk me through why this exists and why you decided to do Resident Evil Containment.
This this is probably going to be the most uninspired comment or answer ever. But honestly, after I spent the couple of weeks or months traversing like code and features from Resident Evil 1, as I explained earlier, I was just looking for a way to use everything I learned and showcase it in the best way possible. And a lot of Resident Evil Containment was kind of made up as I went along, if I'm completely honest with you. I didn't spend like a long time planning the story out or things like that. A lot of it was literally just done room by room as it came.
So did you plan the story first or anything like that? Or is it just like, do you know what? I've got this idea about returning back to the mansion. What was your thoughts?
Honestly, it was exactly like that. I thought, right, okay, I like Hank and the Umbrella Security Service, and I was kind of thinking, all right, wouldn't it be cool if they went to the Arklay mansion just before, the outbreak happened? Well, not before the outbreak happened, but not long after it happened, so to speak. And honestly, I kind of made it up as I went along. I sort of had them wandering around the lab, as you see, with the shutters down and all, and I was kind of making
Oh, it's okay. It's okay. Again, you're seeing footage of Resident Evil Containment. This does have a public release, so you can check this out. All of Aydan's mods are publicly available, which is what I really enjoy about Aydan's work. He's not got any ego about not releasing these mods, which I think is really good. But a lot of these, they're available. You do kind of put out a trial or a kind of a beta effectively on your Patreon beforehand, kind of test the waters, see if people like it, and then you always end up putting them out into the wider community, which is what I really, really enjoy about it.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, sorry, Andy. the thing with Patreon, which it caused a little bit of controversy between some people before, but what I think people didn't understand is that I use it as a tip jar, if anything. All of my mods end up completely free. They're on my website, which you can find on my Twitter profile. Everything is there to download for free. But, people in the past, other streamers and stuff will speak to me and say, oh, why didn't you set one up? I'll donate and chuck you a dollar or two every now and then. And I thought, okay, why not, I guess. Now, some people thought that I was gatekeeping mods and putting them behind paywalls, which just isn't true. The only advantage you really get with Patreon is you get access to test versions. You also get access to them a little bit earlier. But honestly, other than that, they all go out completely free, and it's literally just a tip jar. So, hey, I can buy myself a beer or some pizza while I slave away over this crap.
And just to give us an idea, let's take a complete mod. So Marvin's mod, for example. How long did that take you to put together from, say, start to finish? I appreciate you haven't got a stopwatch, but just give us a ballpark figure.
Well, for Marvin's mod, that was my first Resident Evil 2 mod, and I was pretty new to it at the time, but I think with it being a smaller scale mod, I think that only took around 2 months, maybe, to put somewhere around there.
Okay. And again, these are simple. What I love about these is just such simple concepts. What was the thought process behind Marvin's mod? Was it literally just to kind of bring the Resident Evil Outbreak formula to Resident Evil 2 in the classic vein? Is that was that what you was originally thinking?
All right, so sorry again.
Yes, sir.
The For Marvin's mod, honestly, I just wanted to when I first started doing the mods and I did the Barry's mod and Ada's mod, I was kind of thinking to myself, what can I do for Resident Evil 2 that would be lore friendly and something that's not going to be too grand in scale? Because again, a lot of my mods, as you see, they're sort of stepping stones on a journey as I get better and better and deeper into it. And I've always liked Marvin. Most people, who doesn't? And I just thought it'd be kind of cool to take that Outbreak scenario where you see him and Rita and a few officers talking about escaping the RPD and kind of turning it into a small scale mod. And again, that's kind of what I did. But it's kind of funny because when I look at this mod and how it is compared to what I can do now, you kind of look back and you kind of think, oh man, this could be a lot better.
Is there anything you felt like you could have done better with Marvin's mod, for example?
I'd like to think I could probably fix that little quirk where if you go through certain doors, Rita spawns in the center of the room and things like that.
Yeah, and she runs back to you. That's kind
Yeah, it could probably, there's probably an easy way to fix it, but I think I know how I would do it now. I would probably customize more backgrounds, change up music a bit more, maybe improve the backtracking, extend it and stuff. I could make better cutscenes and actual interactions with the other police and so on. Just little things like that.
No, that's fair enough. What about Ada's mod?
Oh man,
what was your thought process behind that? I mean, surely it must be related to the the article from Resident Evil 1.
yeah, well, that's kind of it. When you read the diary, John's diary in his lab, a lot of people seem to think that he was just writing something to Ada that she never saw. But if you actually read the way it's written, he's speaking to her as if she's actually in the lab with him or has been there, because he's given her the password. He's telling her to take the information from the media room and expose Umbrella and so on. And that was kind of my idea of why I thought it'd be interesting for her to visit the lab. Now, if I was to remake it, there are things I would definitely improve and change upon. But at the time, with the knowledge I had and the skills I had, I was pretty happy with how it turned out. And people seem to enjoy it.
Yeah, no, I must admit it was one of the highlight mods for me. I really enjoyed because it was. I mean, it was what is it, half hour long or what have you? But it's just perfect. It's a perfect bite-sized thing to stream, get out there. And again, it does look professional. It does look like almost looks like an official Capcom product, which is what I imagine you want your appeal is and your target is.
Yeah, that's kind of what I want to do. But again, every creator probably thinks this. But when I look back at it now, I look at it and think, man, oh, I could make this so much better. I could easily fix that up, change this, and just do little tweaks that would really improve the experience. And I've thought about going back and doing these mods someday, but at the same time, I just, people want new experiences all the time. So, got to keep working.
And is there anything that up to now that you've tried to implement, but it's just absolutely not possible?
Well, for Resident Evil 1 right now, the only thing that I haven't quite reversed yet is things like animations. So what I mean is during cutscenes and stuff, you'll have Chris put out his hand and shake his head and things like that. Now, I with Resident Evil 2, that stuff has been reversed, and I have a rough idea of how to make it work, mainly because it's been reversed by other people who've done the work. But for Resident Evil 1, it's all hex code, and yeah, I'm going to need help when it comes to figuring that stuff out.
So your favorite engine to work in at the moment, is it Resident Evil 1 or is it Resident Evil 2's engine?
Personally, if I had to choose a favorite, I would definitely say the first game, but that's because it's kind of like my comfort blanket and my safe space, if you know what I mean. But I will say that Resident Evil 2 is definitely a lot easier to work with and a lot more friendly to modding.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot more material out there and assistance out there. You have Resident Evil Nemesis 30. A lot of the core community kind of works around Resident Evil 2, which is quite nice.
Exactly, and that's why it's a lot more easier to develop for, because it's most people's favorite game. More tools are made for it. There's a lot more attention being put on reversing it and so on. Now, I'm not going to say it's a piece of cake, because the things ResNem do, again, out of this world, but it's definitely the easiest out of the first and second game. Let's put it that way.
I want to bring up a game which had a ton of hype behind. We shared it an absolute ton. We did loads of articles on it, and it did have quite a big push behind it, but unfortunately it got cancelled. Just talk us through Resident Evil Gaiden and what you wanted from that project. And obviously you don't have to go into great detail, and it doesn't have to get into a spat match, but what was the process behind that?
Well, a couple of people on the modding Discord, we got to speak just in general about, overlooked Resident Evil games that we all enjoy, and Gaiden came up a few times. Now, it's a game that I'm quite a fan of. I know a lot of people seem to hate it, but considering what they had to work with on a Game Boy Color, I think it really worked out great. The atmosphere is fantastic. The story, well, it's not going to win any awards, is pretty cool. And you play as Barry. What more could you ask for? Anyway, so we got kind of talking, and someone messaged me on Twitter. Basically, when I was working on, I think it was Marvin's Mod at the time, I shared a tweet or two, and someone messaged me saying they can make basic backgrounds and stuff like that. So I threw the idea of okay, make some of these backgrounds, just give them a try. I imported them into the Resident Evil 2 engine, and a friend of mine, Andrew Coit, who's the guy's been around modding for a decade.
I remember following Andrew like 10, 11 years ago. So he's been a RE2 modder forever.
Yeah, he's like one of the cornerstones and one of the pioneers in it. He made a really cool Barry Burton custom model, so I got that and I just threw it all together just as a quick, test, because I like to put things together and in game and run around, even if it's just one room, just because it gives you a feel of the atmosphere and what it could be like, if that makes sense. I mean, that's how Survivor started with the helicopter crash room. But So yeah, I did that, and it all clicked, and it seemed like a really cool idea at the time, even though, of course, I was still pretty early in my modding career, for lack of a better word, I guess. But yeah, things happened, and unfortunately, it's just one of those things where the project got cancelled. But one thing I will say is that it may come back. That's even though the original iteration may be cancelled, there's a good chance that it could come back.
So, and again, not to get political, but have you managed to retain any of the assets, or would it have to be from the ground up again?
Oh no, we got a massive chunk of the assets. I mean, the sounds, the models, and everything like that. Still got them all because Andrew made them, as well as my friend Ligi or Ligi. I'm not sure how he pronounces it.
Yeah, Ligi boy.
Yeah. He's I've worked with him a lot. I usually pay him to help me out with custom 3D work because that's not my area. But yeah, we have all those kind of assets. The only thing that we don't have are background images. I mean, I do have them, but it's probably best not to use them, just not to sour any waters.
Yeah, and you've always I do notice that you do allocate a lot of time to like ripping a pre-rendered image from Deep Fear or Dino Crisis 2 or something like that, something that's already out there. So, but what is nice about that is you have the judgment and synthesis to go, do you know what? That's not my cup of tea. I'm not an artist. I'm a modder. You give me them assets, I'll make chicken salad out of it. But I'm going to need somebody to put them together for us. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I'm what I would call a jack of all trades, master of none. And I just want to shout out to RT Torres in chat, because that's Ligi. Now, him, for example, he's a fantastic 3D artist. Now, if I need a custom model made, it's a lot easier for me to say, hey Ligi, have you got time to work on this? I want this, and this, like say the Ada model. I came up with the thought of, I said, hey, can you take Ada's head, put it on Annette's body, adjust the texture a bit, and blah, blah, blah. And he comes through every time. And, as he knows, like with the Patreon money that, again, it's a tip jar. When I get some of that, I forward it on to Ligi, because I'm a firm believer that if someone takes their time to help bring my vision to life, then the least I can do is compensate them for their time, as well as credit them, of course, as you always see at the end.
Yeah, but also you are releasing these free of charge. So, and again, this goes back to, I mean, I'm not against Patreon. We're a supporter supported page. We've got supporters. We've got ad revenue, that sort of thing. You don't always have that facility, and are you going to do this full time? No, but for the work you are doing, I do think there should be, at least a beer. I'm not, a small remuneration for the priceless work that you're adding to the community.
Yeah, that's how I kind of look at it. We've all got full-time jobs, families, commitments, and if anyone tries to dare question that, it's if you really were passionate, you'd do it for free. Well, of course I would, and I have for the longest time. It's literally just a tip jar, and it buys me a pack of beers that I can just down while I'm working away and just relaxing in the evening. Happy days.
Yeah, and that's all you can. That's all you can really ask for. It's your little bit back. So we've spoken about where you've come from. We've spoken about what you're doing right now. What is it? Where do you want to go next with Resident Evil modding? What is your immediate aspirations?
Well, at the moment, as you know, I'm kind of doing the total conversion Containment, and I'm working on the Survivor remake. Now, my plan is to, of course, get those done, and I am helping out with one or two other projects. Nothing major. I mean, my buddy Elric on Revisited, I have to shout him out. He's doing incredible work at the moment, and if I can help him out in any way, I will. But I think the ultimate aspiration is to eventually make like a 100% total conversion. So I'm talking maybe make a horror game that uses a Resident Evil engine, but isn't actually tied to Resident Evil at all, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes so effectively. what you're doing is you're using, let's for example use Resident Evil 2's engine. Using Resident Evil 2's engine as like your Doom engine, and you can make or what's the other engine that Duke Nukem uses? I can't fucking remember it.
No, exactly. It's the equivalent of, like, say, Raven Software used the Quake 3 engine to make Return to Castle Wolfenstein. Well, I'll use Resident Evil to make something else.
Yes, no, agreed. So that's your immediate goal, is to just keep working on Resident Evil Survivor, get that out the way, finish up Containment. I mean, where are you going to go with Containment? How many episodes is it going to be?
There's going to be 3 episodes in total planned for that. Now, the funny thing about it is the only reason I split it into episodes is actually due to limitations on the Resident Evil 1 engine. So, for example, the first game only has the zombie models. So in the first episode, it takes place in the labs. So, of course, I have like researchers, zombies, and so on. Now, if I made a big game, when you get to the mansion, you would only have researcher zombies again, which is kind of limiting. So I by splitting into episodes, I can have separate models and separate sounds and separate things for different parts of the game, if that makes sense.
And let's clarify as well. And again, I'm not telling anyone how to suck eggs or anything, but this isn't just like Photoshop where you're just dropping assets into something and you can move stuff around a canvas. This is, I mean, even something as simple as putting text on a screen or making an enemy appear in another room takes a lot of fucking time.
Yeah, it can do. I mean, luckily, after doing this for so long, I've kind of gotten to the point where it's a process of just copying and pasting existing code that I've documented elsewhere. Or in the case of Resident Evil 1, I've made my own because it simply generates the code. So I did put a video on my YouTube channel. Essentially, you there's a bunch of drop-down menus where you select the enemy type you want. So are they alert? Are they idle? Are they crawling? You set their coordinates and so on, and it generates the code for you, which you then literally copy and paste into the script file, and boom.
So actually, what you're doing is you're actually trying to make your own life easy, and for other people eventually down the line who want to get into this, and we've got a couple of questions later that will pertain to that. You're kind of almost setting out the roadmap to making just modding easier.
Yeah, that's literally it. The whole point of my tool when I started it was for it to make my own life easier.
Don't you think, like, where we are now with Resident Evil modding, I almost feel like people are not sick and tired, but because Village and the recent releases of Resident Evil have been favourable, but people just want a classic Resident Evil experience. And with stuff like your mods, and even the way you've the platform that you've chose to implement them on, where you can literally just click the .exe file and it's away and gone. You don't have to install anything, mess around with with other mods, drag and drop, etc. You're filling that void of people who are clamoring for classic, nostalgic Resident Evil from between the years of 1999 and 2000.
Yeah, I think it's just a case of, you're going to have the new generation fans that come along that don't have much interest in the older games, so to speak. But I think a massive, massive chunk of the Resident Evil fandom are made up of people that played the original games, or at least sort of came out, or played sort of perhaps Resident Evil 3 or 4 around the early 2000s and went back and so on. So I it's great that there is a mass appeal for it, and I'm grateful that people even want to play my stuff, to be honest, because I'm not, when I look at my work, I'm proud of what I've put out over time, but then at the same time I also look at it and think, man, is it really that good? Or it could be a lot better. I think we're all our own worst critics.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair enough. like we're exactly the same when it comes to, you know, content creation, the product we put out, and I suppose it's no different if you're actually creating a product for other people to play and enjoy. I can see that, but it really is good gen. Really, you've had a for the small time that you've occupied the Resident Evil modding community. It's been such a positive impact. Like, honestly, I see people talking about your modifications all the time. I suppose in your way, you must get a bit of not imposter syndrome. That's, you know, this is a loose way of saying it, but do you get what I mean? Like, you're almost like, oh my god, people are playing my mods.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, that's kind of one of the best feelings about it, is you slave away over some of the most minute things, or try, you know, for example, there was one particular thing I was trying to make in Containment, and you know, it was just putting the gas in the underground caves at cave areas. Now, some of the rooms you put the code in and it worked perfectly. Others, then it would cause issues, even though the room was stripped clean of any other scripts. And then you'd add a little bit of extra code then, and then something else would break, and then you revert back, but then something else breaks. And honestly, sometimes it's just a complete uphill battle all the time. And for something that players only experience for, you know, a few minutes, if not seconds, during events, can sometimes take hours and days to make. And you know, but seeing people's reactions to it and enjoying it is kind of what, you know, it's what makes me feel happy and kind of like, oh, this is great. So, you know, what I'm doing is worthwhile, so to speak.
Yeah, definitely. And I think you've got such a cool scope to work with, and just these are such simple. And I'm not trying to undermine your work, but some of these ideas are so geniusly simple. It's almost like, oh man, why the fuck have we not done this up until now? Like, for example, I'm a big fan. You were talking about earlier. I'm hoping my camera picks it up. Biohazard for Sega Saturn, Resident Evil Sega Saturn. There was one mode on this, Aydan, that did not make it to any other port of Resident Evil or Biohazard, and that was the battle mode port. And for me, as a big streamer, very passionate about this particular port of Resident Evil, for me, it was a pain in the ass to emulate. So when you, funnily enough, I picked this copy up the same time you brought your mod out. I thought, I've just gone through all of that work, and motherfucker Aydan has gone and put out Resident Evil Sega Saturn battle mode for the PC. So
no,
as a personal note, thank you for that. That's made streaming a lot easier, and just showing features that weren't in the traditional ports of Resident Evil, showing them off and going, this is what the Saturn port had, etc., etc. Genius, mate.
Yeah, well, when you talk about like simple ideas, I'm not offended in the slightest, because I'm, again, when I come back to a lot of my mods, I am a jack of all trades, master of none, as I say. So, like, you know, I try to come up with little plot ideas or little things I put in there. It's all coming from me. So, and I'm not a writer. I don't have the greatest imagination. So, you know, believe me, I'm not insulted by that.
No, that's glorious. But there is scope, and for example, like, you've got, I'm just looking at your mod list here. So you've got obviously Barry's mod was in that Ada's mod, Wesker's Rebirth, which is based on the Umbrella Chronicles scenario of Wesker escaping the mansion. Bloody genius that you included that. That's kind of like a reverse battle mode in a way, but you've made it completely work inside it, canonically compatible. It's fucking genius stuff. What other stuff we got here? So invisible enemies, that's another really good modification that you put out.
Yeah, well, when going back to the Wesker Rebirth thing, the idea for that at the time was, I just I wanted to put something out that was a lot smaller in scale, because I think, if I remember correctly, I think I put the Wesker mode and the battle mode out both within the same month, within a week or two of each other, I think. But they both utilize code and features I'd recently reversed, such as playing voices and playing codes. So playing movies, sorry. So, like, for the Wesker's Rebirth one, a lot of people people, the professional streamers, would always not complain, the wrong word, but they would always say that, my mods are too easy. But then I always say to them, I'm not catering to professional speedrunners. That's what the Chinese modding community is for. But with that, I wanted to make like a Resident Evil 1 version of the 4th survivor mode. So you have 10 minutes to escape the lab before it detonates when you're playing as Wesker. You can actually avoid most enemies and don't actually need to kill them if you learn the lines to run and don't hesitate when getting into rooms and things. But yeah, that was the general idea behind that mod anyway.
Yeah, no, it was. And again, how hard is it can you just talk me through it? And I don't know how long this is going to take, but just talk me through how you import a cutscene into Resident Evil.
Well, on the PC, it's actually very easy. It's literally a case of, say, for example, there's a clip of like the Wesker clip, let's say, when he wakes up in the lab. I literally looked for the highest quality source on YouTube, or whatever I could find, rip bit the video, then I could simply convert it into 4:3 aspect ratio, turn it into an MP4. Then it's literally just a case of importing it into Classic Rebirth because it actually allows you to do MP4 playback. So win-win. It's literally as simple as that.
No, that is it is glorious. And I feel like, damn, there's so much you can work with. I mean, is there? I've seen, for example, the new Revisited has got elements of Resident Evil 1 remake that's kind of been demade back into the original engine. Is there any scope for you to take? And we've seen it quite a lot actually. There's another mod that's like Resident Evil 4. It's not in the RE2 engine, but it's like been demade. Is there any scope for you to demake any of the newer Resident Evil games and put them back into the old format?
Probably not, only because, again, like, Elric's Revisited is already kind of doing that with Resident Evil 1. I mean, what else? I suppose you could take some cool screenshots from the Resident Evil 2 remake and put them in the original game, but that just seemed, to me, that I just find that pointless. If you want to play the remake of Resident Evil 2, it's a good enough game on its own to just warrant playing,
What about something like, I don't know, Code Veronica?
But
the thing is, it's almost like, what would you achieve from doing something like that?
Exactly. It already plays like the original game, so what would you achieve other than static cameras,
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. Is there anything out of the original kind of pre-2000 Resident Evil? Actually, sorry, there was one what I did want to talk about was Resident Evil Survivor DX. Not the Redux version, the third person, but the standard Resident Evil Survivor that you've modified. What was the thought process behind that mod?
Well, with that one, again, I've always loved Survivor. It's been one of my favorite, like, not favorite Resident Evils, but favorite games in general, simply because the music, the locations, atmosphere, it's fantastic. But the idea behind that was I wanted to see if I could change it from being an arcade shooter and make it play a little bit more like classic Resident Evil, but even though it's still in first person. That's why, if you notice, you don't have unlimited handgun bullets. You actually have to find them in the locations, and you're forced to go through certain routes, and just things like that. I was just experimenting, to be honest with you. It's kind of like a precursor to what the Redux mod was, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, and even something as small as that has made playing Resident Evil Survivor so much better. But having the ability of playing Resident Evil Survivor in third person, I think, is the ultimate goal. And the second you finish that mod, Aydan, we will have you on, and we will, if you have the time, obviously, we'll have you on, and we'll sit down, we'll play the entire game together, because I think that's going to be the absolute holy grail of Resident Evil mods.
Well, yeah, I'd be more than happy to do that. But it's a cool, fun little concept. But honestly, there are so many great mods coming. I mean, as you know yourself, you've got During the Storm, which is going to be absolute next level, and Revisited, when that comes, is also going to be pretty mind-blowing. I have to shout out to Elric. His work is fantastic, and he's actually helping me with Survivor. While I would say Survivor is quote unquote my project, because I started it and I've done most of the legwork, he is contributing in ways I cannot even begin to underappreciate. Like, he's doing the masking, so when characters appear underneath the background layers, he's doing that for me, and that is a lot of work in itself. And he's also helping me out with a little bit with some scripting stuff, because he's had a lot of experience with ResNem, on how to do it in Resident Evil 2. He's sort of like my guru and mentor and helping me out there.
So masking, for example, at the start of Survivor, what you're talking about is when Ark Vincent, when Ark walks behind the boxes, he doesn't clip through them. He goes naturally behind them.
Exactly, yeah. Now, on the PC, we have that working because the tools are out there for it. But on PlayStation at the moment, masking is one of the things that is probably going to be done last, because there is no tool for it at the moment, although we do know one or two people who might be able to help us make one, but due to certain circumstances and time warranting, it could be a bit of a delay.
Understood. Before we get to the Q&A part of the stream, I would like to just discuss Resident Evil 1.5 with you, because sporadically you've done works all over the place for it. You've done a bit of transitioning from RE 1.5 PC, transitioning to RE2 PC. You've done a bit of PSX work. Just speak to me on your thoughts of Resident Evil, just outside of your mods, can be. Your thoughts on Resident Evil 1.5 and where you think that project is now with everything that's out in the wild.
Well, I've always loved 1.5, like many people. Don't get me wrong, Resident Evil 2, the release game, is amazing. It's perfect in every way. But I think what I like about 1.5 is just I think it's the ambition and the concepts behind it are pretty cool. I also love the locations more. Like, the factory area in 1.5 is one of my favorite areas in all of Resident Evil history. It just, the atmosphere and the backgrounds and the feeling you get is incredible. Anyway, in regards to it, it's the original prototype that was released back in 2013, 2012, somewhere around there. It's still being...
was this the 45% build, was it, back in 2013? The iGas, the Team iGas version, I think it is.
Yeah, it's IGAS, and it's Team I've Got a Shotgun, which is referenced in the Biohazard opening.
Love that.
But yeah, so those were released back then, and as some people might know, there's been a patch that's come out every year or so by Martin Biohazard. Now, it's it's fantastic. He does amazing work, all things considered. But for me personally, I just the only way I think you're ever going to see a real playable build is either if Gemini finally decides to work on it and finish it, or by porting the assets into Resident Evil 2 and just remaking it there. The original prototype is just, it's literally unfinished. So, for example, you can set a door with script, but you can't lock it because there is no actual code to recognize locks or even keys or anything like that,
So that's interesting. So what you're saying is, I mean, it's hard enough already reverse engineering a game to kind of implement other assets, but what you're doing is reverse engineering a game that is unfinished, that you could do all of this work, but you almost have to do more work than the original programmer in getting some of these even basic stuff like opening a door working.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the stuff in there, you can place items, place some enemies and doors and things like that. They do work, but it's just, again, to go back to the door example, you can place a door down, but you can't lock it for it, so you can't set it so it's locked, and when you have a key, it opens, because that part of the code doesn't even exist. So what they are doing with the patches is they're adding more rooms and things like that, but they're using tricks to make lock doors. So, for example, instead of needing a key, they use something called a flag or variable. So, say, for example, to break it down, I want to go into Chief Iron's office. I can set a message to appear to say the door is locked. Then, if I go into the room next door, I can set an event so that when you go in there, the flag activates that then removes the locked message from the previous room, so you can then go in. Now, you can do a lot of things like that, but again, while it's admirable, and I can't knock it in a million years because I look forward to playing them every patch that comes out. I think the best thing that probably could have been done is to literally just take all the backgrounds, the models, assets, port them into Resident Evil 2 and just remake it in there. It wouldn't be 100% perfect to 1.5, but it would be, put it this way, it would be playable and a lot more enjoyable than walking around empty rooms, which, with nothing to really do, if you know what I mean.
That's a valid point, because we were talking off air and I said that I like the concept, but I think the reason why people enjoy Resident Evil 1.5 is because of the mystique of Resident Evil 1.5. But at the end of the day, you're just walking around locations. So for me, I don't want to speak out of turn, but that's boring as fuck. So this leads to my next question. Why don't you think that's been done? Why have people not just gone, this is a broken game. We've got 45% of a puzzle, and we've already got to reverse engineer that. Why not import it to a system that we already know? It's like using an old version of Word when you can just use a new version of Word and just mess around with it inside of there. It's odd.
I don't know. Well, this is the thing. Like I'm not sure if I can talk about too many projects and things that I know of, because of course, it's not my right of place, but there is a mod DB page for, I think it's called like Resident Evil 2 Rebirth, or so, I can't remember what it's called, but it's made by someone I know who is actually making the backgrounds for unfinished rooms in 1.5, and it's a project he has been working on for a long time, which is a case of porting 1.5 into 2. But I think it's just a case of maybe time, people do have responsibilities and things, effort, not that people are lazy, I'm not insinuating that, but
appreciate that.
So sometimes the amount of work that could be needed is so much that it just burns you out before you even start. It could be numerous things like that, but like the 1.5 rooms you've seen in the PlayStation video that I put out 2 or 3 days ago, like some of those were originally ported by Megan Grass, who is oh man, she is, without her we wouldn't even be able to do half of the modern things we can do with these games. But she ported a lot of them to 2, and she passed them on to me, so I was testing them out, experimenting, fixing whatever little bugs they had, and I thought, hey, let's put them onto the PlayStation to see if it works, and it did. So by the looks of it, there have been little efforts to do it, but nothing's ever seemed to come from it, if that makes sense.
No, makes perfect sense.
It's like the building blocks are there, but they've never been actually stacked and built,
So this is an interesting point then, and I'm gonna really put you on the spot with this one, but it won't put you on the spot that you feel awkward. Why do you do this with Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 1? Why don't you just fuck that off and just take a course in Unity and just make a classic game in Unity with pre-rendered backgrounds? What stops you doing that?
To be honest with you, I've thought about doing that at some point. Now, the thing is, I'm not, even though I do scripting in Resident Evil and been reversing it and slowly learning and understanding how, flags and variables work, I'm not actually what I would call a programmer in the slightest. A lot of what I do is pretty beginner stuff in the grand scheme of it. And I've thought about making something original in, as you said, Unity or Unreal or whatever.
Yeah,
but then I think I'm just a little bit intimidated by the amount of difficulty, time, and effort that would take. Working within these engines has limitations and things, and I find that having limitations helps me to work within a predefined space that allows me to I'm in a narrow workspace where I know what I can do, whereas with those other engines, they're so open-ended and so just. Does this make sense? I'm kind of struggling to explain.
No, so it's all right. So what you're saying is you've effectively got you would rather pick up somebody else's Excel spreadsheet and fix it, or not fix it, but and tinker with it, rather than creating an Excel spreadsheet from absolute zero, and you've got to kind of set everything up from the beginning. You've you've almost got all the formulas in there, but they might need to be messed around with to make them do what you want. But it's not a blank canvas.
Essentially, yeah. I kind of like working within a pre-established engine, rather than literally coming from nowhere, because that would take even longer and be even more difficult, I think.
No, I just thought I'd throw the question. I was just sitting here thinking about it, and I thought, do you know what stops you doing something like that? But obviously, you've spent such a massive amount of time inside this engine, and even reverse engineering a game it should be applauded. It's absolutely unreal. Resident Evil 3, the classic Resident Evil 3. How come you've never got? I don't know if you've got involved with it, but as far as I know, you haven't. Is that on the horizon, or is it just it's more hassle than it's worth?
It's something I'll probably take a look at someday, but the thing is, I didn't want to jump into a third engine and be overwhelmed with that. And you know what I mean? It's like, for example, all the engines work very similar. They all have RDTs, which is basically the entire room compacted into a single file. They all use the same structure for making messages appear or how doors work and things like that. But it's just a case of learning how then to work within that engine's limitations. What tools will I need to be able to do things in it? There's a lot of work behind the scenes to do stuff like that, and
yeah, fair enough.
I kind of wanted to focus on the first game and the second game mainly, rather than diving into all three. Never say never. I probably will at some point when I get fed up of these two, but not just yet. Not just yet.
Have you got what's your window looking like for releasing? Have you got something in place, like a roadmap that you've put out recently, or is it just stuff that's going to be out when it's out?
Well, funny enough, I put up a poll on Patreon because one of the perks I put on there is just like, I'm going to put out polls and I want to hear what people have to say. I put on there, 3 choices. What do you want me to work on most and focus on? And the options were, of course, the Survivor, Redux, Containment, or my tool and a bunch of tutorials. And so far, the winner by a good couple more votes is the Survivor Redux. So at the moment, I think it's probably going to be a case of working on that. Now, I will get the episode 2 and 3 Containment done. I have made some strides in it already. I've shared a couple of screenshots and little sneak peeks on Twitter, but I think at the moment, by the looks of it, I've got to give the people what they want. So I think Survivor is going to be the main thing. Now, I'm going to probably need to focus on building rooms for the next month. Then, of course, comes the script inside of it. Then, of course, when Elric has time, he can help out with masking and so on. It's hard to have a time frame, but perhaps we could have like a second demo out in maybe, say, the first quarter of next year, perhaps, within, say, January, February time, maybe.
Yeah, no, that would work. And are you going to focus on, because I appreciate you're almost juggling 2 ports here, are you going to focus on the PC version first? Make sure you get a coherent game running at its full first, and then look to reverse engineer it for the PS1 version? Or are you just going to bring them both up at the same time?
The plan is to kind of do them both at the same time to save myself effort. Like, so far the PlayStation version is just about up to where the PC demo is now. There are 1 or 2 limitations that I need to work around with eventually, such as getting custom sound effects in for like the guns and the voices, and hopefully movie files. But other than that, it plays exactly like the PC version. All the messages, rooms, models, everything is over and it's fully playable. yeah, that's kind of the idea. I think the main thing I'm going to focus on is just getting the rooms done, get them all linked up with doors, maybe place some enemies and bits and bobs. But then the hardcore scripting can come later, because I think that's going to differ a lot between the PlayStation and PC, because they work considerably differently.
Yeah, and that they certainly do. I couldn't even imagine the monumental task is, but I think that's almost, even though it's already a feat in itself, getting Survivor running in third person in another engine. The ultimate goal really is to get a PS1 version. Now that we think about it, because then you've just got the install base of people's phones, people's PlayStation classics. They can probably burn it to a disc and then put it in their chip PS1s and stuff like that. There's such big scope that you can get out of that, rather than just the streamer doing it on his PC. And that's what I'll be looking. That's what I'll be looking at, as the PS1 version.
Yeah, that's exactly it. As you said, now, nothing wrong with the PC version, and I will argue that it's probably going to be the superior way to play the game. But being able to give it to as many people is definitely going to be kind of my goal. And the PlayStation port is definitely the way to do that. As you said, you can emulate it on your
one day. It's going to be Resident Evil Survivor, Aydan Watkins. Nice little replay going on.
Yeah, well, I'm not. That's a bit of a grey area. I'm not sure if Capcom will be too pleased about that.
Well, definitely send us one anyway. But all jokes aside, we see the effort you're putting in. I'm sure the Resident Evil community also sees the effort you're putting in. We, as members of the community, will do our best to. If you get anything, you want us to share anything, we'll put it out there. We'll put a video up just saying like mod progress, etc., etc. Because this is a project that there's no ego about it. People need to see it.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Contrary to some people's beliefs, I'm not. I'm not. I don't like shilling. I don't share my Patreon on posts, and I don't advertise it. It's literally a sort of thing where, if you look, you'll find it, but people will do that off their own backs. That's kind of how I view it, and I kind of feel the same about this. It's like with as you said before, when I release a mod and it sort of makes the waves within the community. I put a post out on Twitter, and then word of mouth does the work. I don't really like tagging hundreds of people and being like, "Hey, check this out. Hey, check it." It's not really me,
Yeah, no, and I see that. I definitely see that. So we're going to start moving toward the comments section now. There's a couple of questions, statements. I'm not sure it's going to be too long, but we'll go through them for what it's worth. So
yeah, no problem.
We got a sorry, that's my one. So we got a statement from Luke Walker here saying, "Aydan, you're the man. Barry's mod is the best. Marvin's mod was dope too."
Oh, well, thank you. I just I hope you've checked out Containment and some of the other stuff I've done, because it's definitely a step up from those.
We got another one here from Josh Quayle. "This man is a genius. Thank you for all the work you put in, Aydan."
Well, thank you, Josh. Again, I have to reiterate that, while for Resident Evil 1, I will. Yes, I did have to reverse that myself, and I've made my tool and things for that. But a lot of the stuff we do, as I said earlier, we are standing on the shoulders of those that came before us, because if it wasn't for those guys making tools and reversing the scripting stuff and pulling their knowledge out there, a lot of this would not be possible. That's for sure.
But moving forward as well, we're going to see a lot more of these mods because of works of people that have existed before you and your work as well. So hopefully it's going to be easier and easier and easier. And rather than relying on Capcom to put out a product in a classic format, we can just do it ourselves.
Yeah, that's basically the way to look at it. Now, I've mentioned him a few times, but my buddy Elric, for example, if it wasn't for him, I probably wouldn't even bother of diving into the PlayStation ports, because in order to rewrite ISO files and things like that, it's a lot of confusing work. But he actually created a rebuilder tool that allows you to simply put the new files in, double click it, and it actually repacks the PlayStation ISO for you to be able to do it. Now, again, if it wasn't for people like him that made that tool, then we'd be stuck with just the PC. So, again, it's people like Elric, Megan Grass, and Gemini for making these ports happen. If it wasn't for people like this, this modding scene would not be thriving as much as it is now.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think that's an extremely fair and reasonable statement. We've got another question in from Flynn Taggart. He did say, "Love the Survivor Demo mod. Thank you so much for it. I was wondering how difficult it's going to be, and I brought this up briefly earlier, but it'll give you a chance to talk about it here. How difficult modding the cleaner soldiers in Survivor will be. We never had shooter type enemies in a classic RE game before."
Well, it's hard because you don't want to spoil anything, and you are right, there aren't really shooting enemies in the game, but we were experimenting with a little workaround. Now, my buddy Andrew, again, we mentioned him earlier, he's ported over the model for the cleaner, and we were experimenting by placing it on top of certain enemy types, and he changed the animations, and it looks pretty good in game. Whether it's going to work 100%, I don't know yet, but we have made efforts to actually get them in the game. So I'm confident we'll be able to, even if it's not perfect, I'm confident we'll at least get some form of compromised version that will at least function similar to how they do in Survivor.
No, brilliant. Thank you very much for your question, Flynn. We've got another one from Caesar. Awesome interview, Andy. Thank you. Appreciate that. For someone that wants to start modding Resident Evil games, where is a good place to start?
See, that's the $1 million question, isn't it? There's a website that my buddy Elric recently put up. It's classicremodding.com, I believe. Now, a lot of the tools and stuff that have been released and used are available there, but I think the best thing you can probably do is go into the forums there. There's a link to the Discord server on the webpage as well. If you join there, myself, Elric, and many others are there, and we speak almost daily, and I'm more than happy to help out newbies there. Obviously, my advice would be to start basic and start with one thing at a time, because I've had many people say, how can I change enemies, items, models, and do all this at once? And I'm like, whoa, one at a time. It's not it's not as easy as as doing it all at once.
Well, you are reverse engineering a game. This isn't like Photoshop where you're just just import assets, put it there. Like, these things. This game was built on a sequence, like any code. You break the sequence, you break the game. What you're doing is breaking the game to make it work how you want it to.
And what people also take for granted is that these game engines are programmed in the 90s, so there's a lot of limitations and things on them that aren't obviously in modern engines.
Yeah, exactly that. True words have been said.
And to expand upon that, I do apologize. With things like Doom, they've had source ports to bring them to modern platforms that have given them expanded capabilities. The levels you see in Doom mods now and the number of monsters and stuff would never have been possible if they were still using the exact same engine that they used in the 90s. Obviously, we don't have that luxury with these games, so that's why we're kind of pigeonholed into the place we are.
Sorry, I was talking then. There are innovations that you are doing inside the Resident Evil engine, like the lighting effect, where I don't think it's for your mods, but I know definitely Resident Evil Nemesis 30 has done it, where he can turn the lights on and off, and it's almost like a red tinge to it. Actually, you did do it. I think you did it in episode 2, which is leading to our next question here. We might as well just round it off from Josh Quayle. You recently showed some incredible lighting effects with Containment episode 2. Can you shed some light on what sort of role this is going to play in episode 2? So, two-part question there. Talk us through the lighting effects, and then talk about the role it's going to play.
Well, the funny thing is that it's not really innovation at all. All those features you're talking about already exist within the engines, but for whatever reason, Capcom just never really utilized or capitalized on them for, whatever reason. As for how I'm using it, the idea with it is that in episode 2, you are not going to be having auto aim anymore.
And the reason for that is because the rooms are dark. When you enter them, if you have auto aim, even though the room is dark, you can just hold the aim trigger and boom, you snap onto an enemy and can just unload on them. And that's not fun to me, and it's not scary. That's just, So the idea is make the rooms dark, remove auto aim, and then you have to listen out for the enemy. Now there are light sources around, so you're not in total darkness, but it'll force the player to need to listen to the enemy getting closer, because when they do, it moves from left to right in the headphones, and the sound effects get louder and so on. So I kind of want to just bring a little bit of fear back, shall we say? That's the idea of it.
No, that's great stuff. And that when you sent that to me, I was like, whoa. Even again, like, it's just, you're working smart, not hard. Obviously, you're working hard, but you're working smarter. No, it's just great stuff seeing, man. Just returning to a location, but you've completely implemented. You've flipped the game on its head. It's so good to see. And again, it's not throwing 10 Mr. X's at me. That's not fun. Like, it's just unnecessary hard mode. What you're doing is you're literally creating a brand new experience inside of Resident Evil, which is what I really like.
Yeah, I kind of I'm utilizing ideas from other games and things like that, but like the idea as well with the darkness is that I'm going to have an enemy that follows you around the mansion in the dark. So when you say, for example, you go into a certain room and come back, the enemy will be there, but then when you go to another room and come back, they'll be gone. So it creates a bit of a feeling of them stalking you and hunting for you. But again, that's kind of basically what Nemesis does, but in this instance, it's going to be a little bit slower and a little bit more creepy. So, that's kind of the vibe I'm going for.
No, glorious. Absolutely glorious. So next question coming in here from Lee. Would you like to mod the Outbreak game? Is there any scope for modding anything to do with Resident Evil Outbreak?
Yeah, a really good tool was created by a gentleman called Chaps, who's on the modding server. He doesn't post much, but he's created some incredible things for Outbreak. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of Outbreak, if I'm completely honest with you. I appreciate what they were going for. I just hate the execution, that's all. But if I was to mod Outbreak, off the top of my head, I would want to make it a single player experience. So Lone Wolf mode would be the standard new game mode. I would give characters more than 4 slots. Perhaps disable things like respawning enemies, maybe. I don't know. Just off the top of my head, that's what I would like to do, because I remember being really annoyed when I first played it, because I wanted to explore the locations, read the files and messages and enjoy it, but it's always like, hey, come on, you got to keep going, move, stop, stop stopping, and it's not really my kind of thing. I get they were trying to make it so that it's tense and anxious, but sometimes I want to have a breather.
Oh yeah, that's fair enough. So, do you think that would be possible? Not fully. Not to its full extent, but could we see Resident Evil Outbreak being demade for the Resident Evil 2 engine?
It's funny you mention that, because while I'm tweaking things and messing around and experimenting, I did actually take a screenshot or two of Jay's bar and had a low poly 3D model of Kevin run around it, just for my own amusement. But it's something I've thought about doing, believe it or not, but whether it's something worth pursuing is, I don't know. Who knows? I don't want to have too many projects going on at once, otherwise none of them will get done.
Well, and I think if you were ever going to do anything like that, it's almost like Containment. You can kind of release them episodically, because you can say, right, Jay's bar, then below freezing point. And what's good about below freezing point, Aydan, it's the fucking locations from Resident Evil 2. So
yeah, you could recycle a couple of things, yeah.
And you might be able to recycle some from Umbrella Chronicles as well for RE2. Because Resident Evil Outbreak, because I think Ada's campaign and I think Jill's campaign uses assets from Outbreak.
Yeah, they do. They do.
So maybe down the line, but I would definitely be on board if you ever did a J's bar. I think there isn't anything in that I can think of off the top of my head where, I mean, there are elements that you probably won't be able to do, like, you know, manually reloading and stuff like that, but I don't really give a fuck about that anyway. I can't think of anything in J's bar specifically which will be massive deal breakers, because it's only really zombies you face in that. Because to me, it's the enemies is going to be the deal breaker. Anything else can be fucked around with.
Yeah, I think it's definitely doable. I mean, with any sort of demake, you're always going to have some form of compromise. I mean, don't get me wrong. As Elric always likes to lecture me, and I mean that in a good way. You know, nothing is impossible, and yeah, definitely. But I will say some things are improbable or unlikely at the moment, and there are a couple of things in Outbreak that I'm not sure if they would be possible to do. But again, never say never.
So we've got our next one here. Appreciate we might be repeating some questions that we've gone over, but for the sake of the sake, Matt Kep, our very own, he says, sorry, I'm a little late, work stuff, but what was the first thing you modded inside a Resident Evil game?
I think the very first thing I modded was changing an item, if I remember correctly. And I remember being really frustrated because the tool at the time changed the item that you pick up, but it didn't change the model or anything. And I remember at the time thinking, wow, why isn't it changing? Why is it only the item? And yeah, it's quite funny to look back and think, man, how inexperienced I was.
Now, AD has kindly dropped us the Resident Evil. Let me see if I can pull that up here. He kindly dropped us the Resident Evil wiki. Is that the link you guys used for your modding boards? Is it to talk about upcoming mods?
Yeah, I think so. Are you able to get it up on screen at all, just so I can confirm?
Yeah, sure. 2 seconds. I think that's it. Is that it? I don't want to kill your.
Oh, I see it.
Let me see if I can bring. So this is the page in question. So let me just pull that in here.
Yeah, that's the site. That's the one Elric has launched. That it's a lot of work left to go yet, but the plan is when we finish doing most of our mods, we are going to literally pack this site out with all the information you need to be able to mod these games and make your own things. But in the meantime, links to tools are available on the wiki, and I believe on the very front page, I'm sure there's a link to the Discord as well. So if anyone wants to join and have a chat and even maybe dip their toe in, they're always welcome.
Oh, yeah. Here you go. So that's the or Discord to request an account. Oh, well, I say, yeah, you have to contact him on that forum. Okay, so yeah, make an account on this forum. It's probably got the link here actually. But yeah, this is your hub. This is where you guys are creating absolute mastery. Nice.
It certainly will be. There's a second forum as well, but it's one of the older ones. It's not very active anymore, but some information is there. But again, I would probably urge people to go to that wiki one that I sent you, because all the tool links are right there. They're all working. And again, if you join the Discord through the forum, you can speak to the actual active members in the community of modding who will definitely point you in the right direction.
Glorious. Well, that's yeah. If you guys want to check that out, I'd really recommend jumping on over there. This has got a scope to be absolutely crazy. And again, I'm a classic Resident Evil fan. I love the new ones, but my channel, my streams are really focused on the older content, which is where I feel me as a creator and me interacting with my audience, that's where I thrive. So it's people like you that are actually, you know, keeping me in business, really, because I'm doing additional classic stuff.
I'll have to start charging you a commission.
Yeah, you're probably not wrong, and that is a very nice segue as we start to round the show off here. Your Patreon. So if you did want to if you did want to give our friend Aydan a commission. I know he doesn't like to promote it, and we are of course in no way promoting the selling of Resident Evil assets. This go on this link to support Aydan directly as a creator, and that's his little tip jar.
Yeah, no, it's as I always say to everyone when they sign up and say, oh hey, I support you, blah blah blah. It's never requested, it's never required, but it's always appreciated, because keeping me fed with some pizza and a beer while I work away is always cool. Thank you, and I do appreciate it, but it's never ever required to play my stuff, guys. It always gets released free eventually, so
Glorious. Well, that is pretty much our podcast rounded off, but I do have, and it's the most serious question in the world. What did you think of Welcome to Raccoon City?
Oof.
Oh no!
I liked the first half of the film. I'll say that. I thought the pacing for maybe the first third, I would say, was really good. I liked the idea of Chris and Claire being in the orphanage at the start. I thought that was a nice, clever way to sort of weave them into the story. I liked the slow suspense and build up of the truck with Claire and hitting the zombie and the dog licking the blood, and there was a lot of foreshadowing, I think is the word I'm looking for, at the first third of the film, and I really enjoyed the atmosphere. It was slowly building, and then from that point on, it was a train wreck.
Yeah, no, I really felt like we'll give our extended thoughts at a later date, but in short, it did serve its purpose of being Welcome to Raccoon City, an introduction to the lore. But I still feel like it was still a prerequisite for you to play the games to understand what was going on in the film, because it was almost like stupid, like throw you out there Easter eggs that only like people like me and you would get. I just feel like it would probably it's quite ironic, really. You had Infinite Darkness, which I felt was almost so short they could have just put it together and made it a film. But this one, I felt like they didn't give it enough time to breathe, and it probably serves better as a 4-part miniseries.
Yeah, I think there never seems to be a happy medium between the two. You either have the CGI films that are based on the games and the characters. In that sense, it's great, but then they get stupidly over the top, like Leon flipping a bike in the air and shooting and stuff. Or then you have the Mila Jovovich films, which... But I am going to say, I'll probably lose my Resident Evil card for this, but I enjoy them as their own thing. I don't view them as Resident Evil, the game. I view them as a completely separate universe that just happens to share the same characters, and I enjoy them for that.
Yeah, no, it's not unreal. And a lot of effort does go into the Anderson films. It's just, they probably serve as, aside from Retribution, they all serve as really good films, but not good Resident Evil films.
Yeah, the one thing I will say is I can't remember his name, Sean something, the guy that plays Wesker. He was absolutely phenomenal in Afterlife. Loved him.
It's just a shame he got killed by a door in a final chapter. That was no one expected that. Yeah,
thanks, Paul.
Yeah. Well, it has been a pleasure, Aydan. I know we've had a couple of technical difficulties here and there, but it managed to hold up for the rest of the stream. I just want to say again, thank you for all the work that you're doing for the Resident Evil community. You've built yourself a nice little comfortable section of the internet where you can bring us your mods, and they're getting more ambitious as time's going on. So, as a fan, as a friend, we'll do what we can to support you and bring your footage to the masses. But as a fan, I can't wait to see what you're going to do next.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you for having me on, because for me, I'm just just a nobody in a corner of the internet making some little mods for a game I enjoy and just want to share with some other fans who like the classics like me. And I guess it's just sort of exploded on its own, and I can't thank everyone enough for it, because it's again, it's all sort of come naturally. As you know, I don't like shilling. It's not really me, so but I do appreciate that people like what I do, and the support I get. I really, really do mean it. Thank you, guys.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Aydan. Thank you to everybody who's tuned into this episode of the Biohazard Declassified podcast. Thank you to the people that have donated to the stream today: Joe Japsik, Tommy, and Mike. Really, really appreciate it. I've been Andy. This has been Biohazard Declassified, and hopefully we'll see you in the next one.
Bye, guys.